Hello, I built a quadcopter again. I've been wanting to try out some of the more advanced features of the multi-Wii, such as the GPS hold and return to home and stuff, and I've been trying to do that by squeezing it into the 328p chip, which only has 32 kilobytes of flash memory for program space. And I think I may have come close a few times, but it was just really a stretch to do it. And I couldn't really tell if it was my programming that was wrong or whether there was some issue with the connection and GPS or whatever. So I thought rather than pushing that direction too hard, I would just get an Arduino Mega and set up things in the normal way and just do everything normally with all the normal multi-Wii code first, and maybe later on I could come back to trying it on the 328p again. Because really there's not too much of an advantage to having it on the 328p other than that you can put it on a much smaller frame. Anyway, so what we have here is a rather larger frame than a 250. This is actually a 40 centimeters, so it's 40 centimeters from diagonal to diagonal motor, and it's made out of wood again, and based roughly on the cheap-ass quadcopter frame that was about a 280 or 290, I think, size one. But as you can see, it's the same sort of design with just some wooden cross pieces and plywood plates to hold everything together. And I wanted to do that again because it worked out fairly well last time. It seemed to be quite stable. But this time, rather than sticking everything on the outside, I went for a design where the walls of the frame are thinner and taller. So I've managed to squeeze everything inside, although due to some issues I came across, I had to put a few things on the outside like that. So I took a few photos during the build, and we'll have a look at those photos now and just sort of explain a little bit about how it was put together and what I was thinking at the time. So where are those photos? So for the motor mounts, I just used the same mounts that were on the X525 frame. I actually bought some more of these because they're quite cheap. They're like $4, I think, for a set of 4. And the wood is the same as I used last time as well, except it's a little bit different because I actually used 3 pieces for each of the sides like that, because as you'll see a little bit later, I wanted to cut out the middle section of this middle piece for reasons that I'll show you in a second. Here we go. I'm basing it on this Arduino Mega and this ESC, 4-in-1 ESC. And this has some wires that come out each side of it like that, and I wanted to have those wires passing through the center of the frame. So the frame is just wide enough to hold both of those components inside, with probably about 2 millimeters to spare on each side. So it's quite convenient that each of these things is almost exactly the same width. So this piece here is where the motor mounts will be on, and I just cut the side pieces. The one at the top is just a little bit short to fit this in the space. The board that I used here is a pretty neat one, in my opinion. It's actually an Arduino Mega 2560, but it's made in the same form factor as an Arduino Uno, so they can use the same shields. You can plug the same shields onto the top of them and they fit quite nicely. And it also has, if you're willing to solder directly to the board, you can access, apparently they say you can access every single pin of the Arduino Mega chip on there. But the most important ones are broken out into very convenient places on the pin headers there. So to fit that in underneath my pieces of wood in my frame, I had to remove this power jack here, and I also removed this reset button just in case, because it's kind of sticking out the side and I didn't want it to be accidentally bumped. And then I cut the pieces of wood like that, same as for the cheap-ass quadcopter. And, well, actually, one piece is a little bit different. These little pieces here were required just to have a little bit of thickness here for the top piece of plywood to be pressing against it. Otherwise, the screw would just squash in there and bend it down. But otherwise, it's the same as the quadcopter that I made last year. I'm using a little bit of cork here. I actually cut this out so that the screws underneath the motor mounts could fit in. Just cut this section here, I mean. So that's the basic frame all put together there using screws as before. And at that point it weighed 275 grams. So the flight controller board goes in there, and the USB sticks out at the back nice and conveniently. This is the hole in the middle section of the side of the frame that the ESC wires go out on each side like that. And I just stuck this to the bottom of the middle base plate with foam tape, double-sided foam tape. This top side is the heatsink, by the way. It's, I don't think it'll be an issue for heat that it's stuck to the base plate, because all the heat should be coming out on this side. I used a few plastic screws and the rubber grommets to stick the Mega onto the bottom rear of those plywood plates. Yeah, so for the sensors, I'm using all individual components that are just breakout boards, basically, that I've bought over the last few months from SparkFun or from Amazon or from Banggood or whatever. And since I had enough to do this, I thought I would use them all, put them all together in this build. And this on the top here, I think, is the barometer, and this is an MS5611 barometer, and the bottom there is an MPU6050 breakout board. And quite conveniently, you can see the 4 pins that you need for I2C. These first 4 pins at the top are all lined up in the same positions, and that was quite convenient because it allowed me to solder them to each other like that with a pin header. And for the barometer, I used a little bit of this fluffy gauze sheet and some heat shrink, and heat shrunk it like that to keep the wind out. And it turned out that wasn't really good enough, so I glued that side closed with some CA glue, and I also put another piece of heat shrink on at this end here where it's kind of open, and that seems to be pretty good seal now. I used this idea that I saw in York Brooking's video where he just sticks some pin headers directly into his Arduino Uno and solders onto the other side. I thought that was a pretty good idea because it leaves you, there's no permanent change to the board, and you can unplug them and plug them back in to reach in and, you know, access places quite easily. And I actually found that I had 2 types of this L-shaped pin header, one that was quite short like that comes out directly and turns directly. And just by coincidence, I have another type that comes out a little bit higher and turns, so it fits right over the top of this one quite nicely. So I used those to good effect. And so that's the extra piece of heat shrink on the barometer there. And I stuck the base of that, so that's the accelerometer gyro at the bottom, and I stuck that directly to the Mega with double-sided foam tape. And that's the power and I2C lines connected up there. Started to get quite a bit busier than that after a while with the wiring, because I needed to power it from the ESC here, so that's those 2 there. And then over here we have the 4 wires for the motor controls, and then on here we have 5 wires that are going to the NRF24 radio module, and there'll be a couple more going to power as well. Actually, wait a minute, no. The NRF24 module needs to be powered by 3 volts, not 5 volts, which everything else is running at. So to power that with 3 volts, I used one of these little step-down transformers. Pretty good, these things. And I just tidied that up with some heat shrink like that. So that's yeah, looks a bit messier than what we started with, but that's partway through what it looked like. And I stuck the radio module up on the front end with foam tape like this. Left those 2 capacitors on there, can't hurt. So the back looked like that once everything was stuck on and heat shrunk. No GPS or anything on there at the moment. I just wanted to give it a flight without that stuff, just to check that it was flying okay before I started with GPS hold and return to home and stuff. So with all the motors connected up and attached and everything stuck on, including the XT60 plug, that was how it looked when it was finally done. Of course, I taped these inside here as well. And at that point it was 684 grams, or with the battery, a 3S 2200 milliamp hour battery, so the all-up weight ready to fly would be 876 grams at that point. And then it was ready for the first outside test. So there you go, that was the first outside test. Not really much to show, I was just giving it a quick test to see it wasn't going to do anything crazy, and I tried tuning the PIDs a little bit as well. It was much more comfortable with 8-inch props, so I made it so that 8-inch props will come to about here. 9-inch and 10-inch it has enough room as well, but it wasn't quite as stable as it was with the 8-inch props, so I'm just going to go with 8-inch props all the way from here with this, I think. So anyway, after that I wanted to add, of course, a GPS module and a compass, which is what we have at the back here. This is where they are now, and I'll show you why I ended up putting it outside when I originally planned to put it inside in a minute. And up on top of here we have the compass. This is the same compass that I used for the radio control car that returns to home, and that's just stuck on here, up and away from the magnets and the motors and stuff, and it just sticks on. You can tighten that wing nut a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. And I also have just a rubber band here that can be used to just to give it a little bit more stability and try and keep it in that central position. So anyway, I have a few more photos of that. So originally I stuck the GPS module inside the front on the bottom with some double-sided foam tape as well. And this worked really well until I stuck my Mobius camera on top of it here and blocked out its view of the sky. And also I hear that the Mobius can produce some RF interference for this as well. So I'll show you that in a minute, how it worked quite well without the Mobius stuck on, and also how it failed when the Mobius was stuck on there. So that is like that, and then the compass is on there. I guess we didn't really need to look at these photos, did we? Nothing new there. Anyway, so that's yeah, I guess we didn't really need to look at those photos at all. I also made this on the third day of testing, just to try and get rid of the jello. And yeah, I guess I just showed you this, didn't I? The compass, the GPS is up there, and all the wiring for those two is coming out the back. So anyway, let's just have a look at the video that I got when I tried the GPS hold and the return to home for the first time, because as usual with the stuff that I'm doing, it turned out that the first time I tried something it worked quite well, and then the next time I tried it didn't work very well at all. Seems to be a recurring theme with this stuff. But anyway, this is the first time that I tried it. Yeah, I tried this a few times before and it doesn't want to land. So I guess I've set it up wrong to land automatically. Maybe I need to change something, but this is fine because all I'd really want it to do is return home above me, and then I can control it down anyway. So yeah, this is pretty good. And the altitude hold seems to be improved greatly once the GPS is working together with it. Yeah, it's much better altitude hold than it was without the GPS. I might put the camera on there and see how steady the video is. Oh yeah, I guess this is the home position now, directly where I am. Still doesn't want to land though, does it? Whoa! Man, those batteries lose power quick once that starts to beep. Cool. Well, it seems to work fairly well as long as the camera is not blocking the GPS's view of the sky. Fairly happy with that. I wonder how smooth the Mobius footage was, jello wise. Okay, well you can see it was working quite well that day, as long as the Mobius wasn't stuck on here. So that's the reason that I moved the GPS back to there. I wanted to keep the camera and stuff at the front, and I'll possibly in future be putting the camera gimbal on here as well, which would produce even more problems for the GPS if the GPS was at the front. So after that I put the GPS at the back, and I also stuck this sort of rubber damping ball mount for the Mobius on there to try and get rid of any remaining jello. And as far as getting rid of jello, it seems to work very well. However, as I mentioned before, when I tried this again, even though the only thing I changed was to move the GPS to the back, it's kind of wobbly and bumpy, and it doesn't seem to stay very stable anymore, even though I didn't change the PID settings or anything. And also the GPS hold, no, the GPS is fine, but the barometer is doing a sort of a crazy up and down thing that I haven't quite figured out yet. So I still need to put in a bit more tuning and work into this. But I'll just close out the video with some footage that I got from the third day of testing, which was after I had this on and the GPS at the back. And I've run this through a filter in Virtual Dub to remove the shaking. It's called a deshaker filter. So this is the kind of footage that we got before the deshaker filter. And this is what we get after the deshaker filter. I've also applied some barrel distortion correction in Virtual Dub as well, to keep lines that should be straight. So this is, you can see at the edges of the picture here, there's some black borders moving in there when the quadcopter rolls around a little bit. And just in case you are thinking that maybe this post-process has removed some of the jello, I really don't think it has, but it's just a bit hard to tell when it's bumping up and down how much jello there is. So that's one reason I tried this post-process. But I tried this again using exactly the same filter settings with some video that I took last year that has very bad jello. And we'll just have a look at this now. And here's the result when that has been run through the deshaker filter. So you can see that the jello is still there. This filter is not removing any of the jello. So anyway, I'll just let the rest of the video run with the footage that I got on the third day. It was a nice sunny day, kind of hot. There was a lot of people there flying, so there were some interesting things to look at instead of me just being there by myself. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you next time.